my thinking before the pandemic started was a lot different to how I think now. And there's an English commentator called Douglas Murray who's very right wing in his thinking. And during the race riots in America, a friend of mine started up an anti-racism group that we used to sort of get together on Zoom on a weekly basis and discuss things. And there was a book by this Douglas Murray called The Madness of Crowds that we all listened to, and then we kind of got together on a Zoom. We discussed it as a group. And back then, this was sort of at the start of the pandemic, my thinking was very different. And now he's just brought out another book, which I'll probably listen to today. Mm-hmm. I think it's called The War on the West or something. The War on the West, I think it's called. I was not on the same page with him when we reviewed this book.
The first one, yeah, the crowds, the madness of crowds.
And during the course of the pandemic, with my scrutiny of these laws and things that have changed that I just don't agree with, now that my thinking's changed, I find that I'm more on the same page with him. Not with everything, but
similarities and beliefs.
Whereas before I thought that he was very controversial and everything that he's saying, I'm just so far this way on the spectrum.
Yeah.
But
it was important to see the other perspective.
Yeah. And I'm really interested to observe consciously with my self-awareness what
drives these thoughts and beliefs.
Well, just my experience of his next book, because my thinking's changed now. So the first time I listened to that first book, I was right here, and I was just, my brain was fighting itself throughout the whole book.
Yeah,
because it doesn't think that way.
Yeah.
But now that it's rewired during this 2 years in terms of the thinking, it's not going to be fighting itself like it was initially.
You're going to go into it more
I'm
open.
I'm going to go into it more. And it's going to be very interesting just to observe myself and the openness.
It's important to be open.
Yeah.
And it's good to know both sides, really, to make an informed decision on belief, personal belief.
Exactly. But I think the one thing that I've learned throughout this before the pandemic, I think there's a lot of people like me who've changed in thinking since, but if you're here, like if you're on either side, neither one wants to try and understand the thinking behind the other one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you're right wing, you're completely closed off to the reason why the left wing thinks the way they do,
which is a flaw,
and vice versa. And that's why it's so clearly demarcated there between the two of them. It's just so important to be open to how the others think.
Yeah.
And until we can get a large portion of the world's population open to that possibility, there's always going to be wars. There's always going to be wars.
Yeah.
Because you're so black and white within your thinking to the point where sometimes your brain just doesn't have the ability to be able to
doesn't have all the information.
It doesn't have all the information and just doesn't, someone will be speaking on the opposite side of the spectrum that you support, and your brain is literally, it's literally, what's the best way to describe it? It's rejecting every word that's being said by that other person. So it's not even absorbing.
Yeah.
Because it's already made the decision that what you're saying is wrong.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have the ability to absorb, like genuinely absorb that information because it's already decided that you're wrong.
Yeah.
And that's the
flaw.
world.
Yeah.
It's the world in a nutshell. And until we,
it's like you said, the title of that book, The Madness of
Crowds.
It's like you want to feel like you identify with a group. You want to feel like you're acknowledged in a group. And so you identify as, I'm a leftist, or I'm a right wing, or I'm a this and I'm on that. So naturally, when you identify with a group, you've already identified with the opposites. And so you because you've identified here, naturally you want to reject what you believe are your enemies or opponents.
Exactly.
And that's the flaw
Yeah.
with these groups.
And it's literally how your brain is wired, because I know from my personal experience, like you grow up, whether you're Labour, whether you're National, whatever the political sort of supporters of your parents. And if you grow up, previous generations, and you grow up in that household,
passed on the biasness.
Yeah, and your brain is literally wired to those principles, whether they be Labour or National.
Yeah, without actually
being
seeing
open.
it for yourself.
Yeah.
And hearing and absorbing the information to make an informed decision.
Exactly. And because those neural pathways have been formed,
Yeah.
growing up with those perspectives of your parents and the generations ahead of you,
And your surroundings.
your brain's not wired to hear anything else but that.
Yeah.
And that's why you're so opposed to the other thing. And you don't even have the ability to be able to absorb, because all the pathways are just like, nah, man, as soon as it hears red or blue or whatever, it's just
turn
like,
off.
Reject.
Yeah. There was like one of my former managers back in NZ. He said something that like was quite profound at the time, because back then I wasn't big in politics, especially New Zealand politics. And they were doing the whole, like Labour versus National. And my manager told me, he said, I'll never vote for National. And it just made me question, like never, like why? Like without even hearing the other, like what they had to offer.
Yeah.
He just automatically like, I'll never, like. So ever since then, I knew, like, okay, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah. So you question that.
Yeah, like in my mind, I questioned. I was like, never. Like, so now, because I rhetorically answered questioned it, it's made me kind of like explore this whole other area. Like, but what if this happens? Like, what if that happens? And then now I realize the importance of like hearing all aspects. And not to choose a side, but to choose like the idea over groups. So like you want the best. This me talking to myself, like I want the best for people. You know? I want to be able to solve all these issues. So let's start asking where people think the solutions are, and regardless of where the source comes from, like absorb it, analyze it. And try to comprehend the pros and cons of an idea from everything. And sometimes, a lot of times, these groups, they share the same philosophies.
Yeah.
But just maybe because it's coming from a different party, it has the reputation of something else. Reputation of blue or red or whatever. But focus on like the idea, which is like the why. Like, again, what do you want for the country? What do you want for the planet?